And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about Caitlin Clark and her ridiculous performance against the Washington Mystics the other day. And, she played phenomenally. She always plays great in a lot of these games. And a lot of people I feel like they really don't give her the enough credit for what she's done for the WNBA. A lot of the WNBA players don't even give her credit for what she's done for the game. And it's annoying because, again, without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA wouldn't be averaging, 100,000 views. And without her, the league wouldn't be as famous. Without her, players wouldn't even know, or fans wouldn't even know who half of these players even are and what they've done for the team. And recently, 2K, they finally made a WNBA edition, where a female athlete is the cover athlete for their game, which is the first time that's ever happened. And that wouldn't have happened without Caitlin Clark. So it's really unfortunate. But in the game against the Mystics, she ended up scoring 29 points, ended up getting 5 rebounds, 13 assists, as well as 5 steals. She is the only rookie to have multiple 20-plus point games, along with 5-plus rebounds and 10 assists this season. And let's see, what else did she do? She became the first WNBA player ever to have 25-plus points, 10-plus assists, 5-plus rebounds, and 5-plus steals, along with 5-plus three-pointers in a game. And she also became the first player since 1973 and 1974 in both the NBA and the WNBA to record 29, 13, 5, 5 three-point makes and 5 steals, along with 3 blocks in a game. And guess what? She still lost. It's unbelievable what this woman has to do just to win a game, and it's unbelievable that when she puts up stat lines like this, they don't even win the game. It's really sad, and it's really unfortunate, and it's a terrible situation that she's put in. And why did they lose? The coach. The coach was awful in the final minutes of this game. The coach made an adjustment to the lineup that was incredibly unnecessary, and it just completely killed the entire chemistry that the Fever were having. They came back from a 20-point deficit in this game, and they still ended up losing. I don't understand. I have a feeling that this coach is going to end up losing her job at the end of this season. I wouldn't be surprised if the coach of Iowa, that coach Caitlin, is going to become the new coach for the Fever, because let's face it, this coach is just holding this team back. And on top of that, a lot of these players, unfortunate as it is, they're also holding this team back. I'm sorry to say, but this team is just not at the same level as Caitlin Clark. It's really, really unfortunate. Granted, a lot of these players in this game, they didn't even play that well to sort of help Caitlin win this game. Kelsey Mitchell, she became an all-star this year. I'm very surprised she became an all-star. She ended up scoring 15 points but took 14 shots and missed every single three-pointer she took. And Aaliyah Boston, who is, in my opinion, the second option for this team and a well-deserved all-star for the team, she ended up only scoring 6 points and took 4 shots. That cannot happen. There's no reason why Boston should be taking 4 shots as opposed to Mitchell, who was taking 14 shots. Are you serious? Now, another player that ended up playing pretty well was, let me just go ahead, Nalissa Smith. She ended up getting 11 points, but again, took 10 shots. The efficiency on this team is extremely bad. And if it weren't for Caitlin, this team wouldn't be relevant, obviously. And if it weren't for Caitlin, this team wouldn't be nearly as good. And what makes this performance even more baffling was, even with this performance, for some reason Angel Reese was ranked higher in the Rookie of the Year award standings for some reason, and all because of her, double-double streak, which I will point out, she was stat padding in the previous game. You guys, again, that might sound like a little bit of hater logic, but in the final minutes of the game, when they were up by, I want to say maybe 7 points with 15 seconds left to go, or 8 points, something around that, the game was already decided. right? The game was over, and here you have Angel Reese still calling for the ball and still trying to score because she was 2 points off of getting she was like a few points off of getting her double-double and continuing her streak of consecutive double-doubles. And while I do understand that, like, you want to keep that streak alive, if the game is over, like, do you really have to go and get another basket? Like, I'm not one of those guys that defends the unwritten rule of the NBA and the WNBA where if the game is over, you should just dribble the clock out. But this is going to be the type of performance that sort of goes and gets swept under the rug for Angel simply because she's still on that double-double streak and how no WNBA player has ever been on a double-double streak as much as she has, which I have no problem with that, but it's just really like the problem that I will have is that this kind of performance is just going to get pushed under the rug and she's going to gain a little bit more credit than she needs to gain as opposed to where Caitlin, she's going to get the biggest criticism for Caitlin is the fact that the team keeps losing. Even though the reason why they lose is not her fault whatsoever, and the reason why they can't win is not her fault whatsoever. She's going to get criticism for things that are out of her control, as opposed to Angel, who's going to get praise for things that are in her control and are just going to get shoved under the rug. Because, I mean, a meaningless 2 points at the end of a game that's already decided, it shouldn't be taken, as valued or like as important as a performance like Caitlin did. And really, like I said before, the coach and her rotations is going to hold this woman back. And again, with Angel Reese and her double-double streak, I mean, half of again, it's going to sound like hater logic, but a lot of her rebounds are off of her own misses. And is that really valuable for a team? Is that really like the most important thing that the player needs? In my opinion, it isn't, but again, it just sounds like hater logic from a lot of other people's perspective, but I genuinely just don't understand. Like, this double-double streak, sure, it's important, and the winning games, sure, that's also important, but a lot of these things that Caitlin has to go through are just completely out of her control. Like, even her own teammate, Kelsey Mitchell, said that she's never once in her life had to deal with getting double teamed at the half court. Like, this is something that only Caitlin has had to deal with. Like, there's never been a WNBA player that gets double teamed immediately when she crosses half court. And that's not even going to get talked about because it's like these situations are almost impossible to counter if your team doesn't know how to counter it. I mean, if she gets doubled, like, she immediately gives the ball up and then the women on the team, they just don't know what to do with the ball. And it infuriates me because it's like usually when an NBA player gets doubled, like for example, when James Harden was on his ridiculous scoring stretch with the Houston Rockets, when he gets doubled, the rest of the players, they know where to stand and to take advantage of the double team, right? Create open looks for themselves and for the rest of the team off of the double team. Like, there was this one play where in the bubble, James Harden, he scored like 20 points in the first quarter, and obviously, teams were immediately starting to double him. So Russell Westbrook, being that second option, he stood in the middle of the sort of painted area, I guess you could say, and drew in a lot of the weak side help, right? Now, the difference between what Russell Westbrook did and what the WNBA players on her team are doing is that they space out for some reason and they don't even bother trying to shoot the ball. Like, they don't put themselves in a position to score, and they don't put themselves in positions to allow other players to score. And part of that might be because of the coaching. Part of that might also be because of the women not knowing how to deal with that, because again, it's rare that a WNBA player gets double teamed as much as she does. But again, I feel like this is just basic basketball knowledge that a lot of these players and a lot of these teams should already know how to counter, yet they just don't. Like, when James Harden was getting doubled, like, Russ knew exactly where to stand, and he got himself into a position where it was basically either a basket or a wide open three that was going to happen. Like, the defender that was on him was Norman Powell, and Norman Powell is a much slower defender and like a much slower player than Russell Westbrook. So he got himself into a position where basically there was no point, like there was a point of no return for the defense coming in from the Dallas Mavericks. I believe that was the team that they were playing up against in that matchup. And I wish I had like a graphic and like a picture of showing like what I'm talking about, but when he got the ball in the painted area, he immediately blew by Powell, and with the spacing that the Houston Rockets had at that time, it was really difficult for the help defender to go down and contest that. Once the ball got to Russ in the painted area, they essentially like reached the point of no return, and that was a basket for Russ. But he put himself in a good position to score. He put himself in a position that if he wasn't going to score, the help defenders would come in and try to stop him from scoring in the paint, and that would have been a wide open three-pointer for one of his teammates. And the WNBA players, at least on Caitlin's team, they don't do that for some reason. Blame it on the coach, blame it on the players. I mean, you could honestly blame it on both of them, but they don't help her. And on top of that, the coach runs the same play over and over and over and over again. After she runs it the one time, it doesn't work. She runs it again the second time. It doesn't work. Whoops, let's run it a third time. Doesn't work. Okay, let's run it again. It's like, what are you doing? But aside from that, we are out of time for the fourth segment. So we will go ahead and go into the fifth segment where I talk about Mark Armstrong and his status on the Brooklyn Nets, because he is going to play in the Summer League. And as you guys know, or if you haven't tuned into the podcast previously, I'll just go ahead and explain that in the fifth segment. So I'll be right back after this short break.